And a very happy Wednesday to you at 12:08 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, The John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, this morning, the feds in Los Angeles made a huge bust on the Rolling 60s Crip Gang, including an indictment for their leader, Eugene Big U. Henley, who has been passing himself off as an entertainment mogul, and a community activist. I got to play you a little piece from the indictment because guess who was giving him money?
The RICO charges against Mr. Henley and his associates reflect a pattern of crimes that runs a gambit from extortion to robbery to murder to tax fraud and to human trafficking, all under the umbrella of a well-organized criminal organization led by Mr. Henley. Additionally, Mr. Henley duped the County of Los Angeles by running a nonprofit named Developing Options, which was set up to pull youth out of the gang life and promote anti-gang solutions. Yet Mr. Henley continued to personally orchestrate violent gang activity that impact our communities.
Let me guess, did that go through the LA County Department of Public Health?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Next slide.
Apparently, this organization also got money from Karen Bass's gang reduction programs. So just think about this. The head of one of these nonprofits to get kids out of the gang life was the leader of one of the biggest gangs in Los Angeles.
Okay, if he was successfully able to scam money out of Karen Bass, there is zero chance he also didn't take the village idiot to the cleaners.
Yeah.
I bet you he got more money from Ferrer than he did from Bass.
Not only that, he got Shaq to donate to that nonprofit.
That's where that TNT money's going to, huh?
This is why we need to do a full-on audit and examination of every single nonprofit that has a big contract with the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles, because now we find out one of them was literally a criminal organization.
We're funding the gangs. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, we know that California Governor Gavin Newsom is trying to make headlines promoting his podcast so he can reinvent himself as a moderate Democrat with electability in the 2028 presidential election. But while Gavin Newsom is making headlines related to the podcast, he's also creating negative attention. Gavin Newsom, who, like many Democrats, decided that if they were going to be popular within the Democratic Party, they needed to show how many goodies they could give to illegal aliens. Remember back when Kamala Harris said that she wanted to defund ICE and use the money for transgender reassignment surgeries for illegal aliens?
We are doing it.
That had to be, out of all of her ideas, the most ridiculous one she came up with.
Well, and then the other side was using that as an attack ad over and over and over again at her, and her campaign people said, oh, don't even address it.
Yeah, and by the way, just in case anyone's listening who is thinking about having one of those surgeries, if you want to get rid of your genitals, all you have to do is pick up some hot teas over at the Starbucks, and they'll do that for you and give you $50 million.
Not worth it. You've seen what happened to that guy? Not worth $50 million.
Based on the description of what happened to his groin and genitals, it sounds like the court description of Michael Jackson's. But anyway, I digress. When Gavin Newsom was bending over backwards to show how generous he was to illegal aliens, he said that the state of California would pay for health insurance for illegals. So we did. The problem for Gavin and company is that there are many more illegals in California than they thought, because they always get undercounted. And when other states are cracking down on people who are in the country illegally, and California welcomes them with open arms, many move to California specifically for the goodies. And the goodies they get. However, the state of California doesn't have the money to pay for said goodies, including their health care.
We found out last week that Gavin Newsom asked for a $3.5 billion loan to make Medi-Cal whole because it vastly underestimated how much that program would cost to give health care to everyone in the country illegally. Well, here we are a week later, and Medi-Cal is asking for $2 billion more dollars.
Because they are broke.
Let's start with this report from KCAL.
A crisis tonight for the state's largest health care plan. We have learned that Medi-Cal needs a massive bailout to continue coverage for 15 million low-income people, which this year, for the first time.
Think about that. The state of California's population is 40 million. 15 million, almost half of the population is so poor that they're on the plan that's supposed to only be for the people that are in dire poverty.
Well, California has some of the wealthiest zip codes in the nation, places like Atherton, places like the South Bay. However, we also have some of the biggest poverty in the nation. Some of the most impoverished zip codes in all of these United States are right here in California, in part because we've driven out the middle class and we're left with the rich and the poor.
Well, and if you've talked to anyone that's ever been on Medi-Cal, it's such a good program. It's so generous. It almost is worth it to make no money because your health care is free. If you make just a little over whatever that income limit is, you're going to be paying more just to get the minimum health care.
No wonder we're going broke.
Includes the undocumented. KCAL News political reporter Tom Wade is here. And Tom, tell us what's going on.
Well, yeah, so it's a pretty complicated issue, and Democrats say, these things happen. There's a line in the budget, and sometimes it doesn't line up with what happens by the end of the year, and they solve the problem. But
yeah, it's 50% more expensive than they said it was going to be.
Whoops.
It doesn't line up with what happens by the end of the year, and they solve the problem. But Republicans have a very different opinion here.
I love Pat Harvey's response to that.
Sometimes it's not even words, it's just the noises she makes.
Problem, but Republicans
by
the end of the year, and they solve the problem. But Republicans have a...
Hey, if you were sitting in her chair, you may do the same.
Republicans have a very different opinion here, as you can imagine. So late last week...
Maybe it's just because it's a story about Gavin, and she was thinking about Gavin's weird noises in her head.
Oh, if you marry those two up, it's going to sound like a porno.
Republicans have a very different opinion here, as you can imagine. So late last week, the governor had to ask for an emergency loan of about $3 billion to keep Medi-Cal from going broke. Well, tonight, we've learned it will need twice that amount to stay afloat. State Republicans say they predicted this crisis a year ago and say the recent move to ensure the undocumented is a big reason for the crisis. Tonight, a crisis in Sacramento. The health plan that serves 15 million Californians, mostly low-income people, is deep in the red. Democrats, who have a supermajority in the legislature, will have to find an extra $6 billion to keep the health care plan for low-income residents from crashing.
Better start checking those couch cushions.
Well, what they're going to do, whether it's now or in the future, is they're going to want to raise taxes on the rest of us to pay for this. Because $6 billion is not an insignificant amount of money. That's a lot of money. And it's very difficult to paper over an amount that large.
Republicans are blaming Democrats for extending coverage to 1.6 million undocumented residents.
We're not surprised. I mean, we saw this coming a year ago when they legalized adding all undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants, onto Medi-Cal and providing free, unlimited universal health care. And at the time we asked, is there a limit on how many people can join? They said no. So
everyone can come.
Come one, come all.
Can you apply if you're out of state?
Why not?
So we're not surprised that the program has basically become insolvent to the point where the governor had to request a $3 billion loan last week. And then just yesterday, they revised the numbers even more.
Caught in the middle, millions of...
How about that? You come to the state hat in hand saying, hey, my program is a little overextended and we need $3 billion. And then just a few days later, I'm going to need another $2 billion.
Think about this. That is essentially our take on everything. The FAIR plan is insolvent. So we're going to need money to bail out the FAIR plan. The bullet train is insolvent. We need money from the federal government to bail out the bullet train. Our public transit is insolvent, so we need a state bond to bail out public transit. There's nothing that we're operating here in the state of California that works like a Swiss clock. Everything is out of balance.
Caught in the middle, millions of low-income Californians. Providers that work with Medi-Cal fear the possibility of future cuts. Even the smallest could be devastating.
We serve about 82,000 patients annually, and so cuts to Medicaid would be a loss of patients being served in the thousands. And what that'll mean is that these patients who will no longer have coverage will end up then going to hospital emergency rooms.
You know, this is always the argument that you hear. Well, we got to cover everybody, including the people in the country illegally, because if you don't do that, the emergency rooms are going to be packed. The emergency rooms are packed now.
Oh, I have a friend who had 104 fever and went to an emergency room in a very high income earning zip code and figured, okay, I'll be treated there. Oh, no. With 104-degree fever, they had to wait there like 15 hours, and he said he was the only one there that spoke English.
And really then impacting the safety net and impacting the safety net of the entire community.
Yeah, that's an argument you can throw right out the window because I would love to see a correlation with we put everyone on Medi-Cal and the crowding at the emergency rooms went down because it has not.
No, all of them are jam-packed all the time.
The issue of allowing undocumented people to enroll in Medi-Cal is a major political issue. It's also a complicated one.
Undocumented people contribute to the economy of California, pay taxes, pay Social Security taxes, even though they don't qualify for Social Security benefits. But the politics of the issue is very difficult and is likely to become even more difficult in the months ahead.
Democrats defend the bailout, saying Medi-Cal saves the state money.
How?
I would love to have one of them explain that.
You can just say that, but if you want to tell us what the savings are, where's the savings?
And if the ER is the answer to all of these questions, show me an ER that's empty. Show me an ER where you can just walk in and get service right away.
Democrats defend the bailout, saying Medi-Cal saves the state money in the long run.
This is something that we know is solvable, and it saves us money in the long run to keep people out of ERs.
No, it doesn't.
And they're still in the ERs.
And it saves us money in the long run to keep people out of ERs, to make sure that we are supporting hospitals, which literally could close if they lose Medi-Cal funding. Part of it is we're a success story. Part of it is that we actually did what we were supposed to do, which is make sure people don't die because they don't have health care, don't go bankrupt because they don't have health care.
This person has a very high opinion of themselves.
They are $6 billion in the hole, and they regard that as being a victim of their own success.
Democrats say a much larger crisis could be looming. They say President Trump wants massive cuts in the federal health care spending, and the feds sent $100 billion to California last year for low-income residents. That's more than half of Medi-Cal's entire budget. So, Pat, we'll have to see where this goes.
And thanks so much for breaking that down for us, Tom, and staying on top of it.
Thanks, Pat.
There you go.
What do you think Donald Trump is going to do when Gavin Newsom shows up to Washington, D.C., in Washington, D.C., with a tin cup?
Think he's getting turned away at the door.
Yes. Or there are going to be strings attached. The strings attached, I would assume, for any bailout money for Medi-Cal will be that illegal aliens cannot apply for it. And Gavin Newsom will not be able to say yes to that. He can't politically. He's already digging in his heels. I saw that he showed up at the state capitol and he was asked about it, and he said that he is not going to reverse that policy. Okay, if he's not going to reverse that policy, do not expect 1 red cent from the federal government, which means that the money is going to have to come from the state somewhere, which means he's going to have to raid the rainy day fund, which I'm sure will happen, or he's going to have to raise taxes on everyone else, which he doesn't want to do because he's trying to reframe himself and reposition himself as a blue dog moderate Democrat in the 2028 presidential election. So all of these left-wing excesses that the state legislature loves to indulge in are not something he's interested in. He doesn't want to do that. He does not want to be a tax and spend liberal. He knows, or at least with how he's trying to present himself, that is political death. So he's going to have to figure out where to get this money from someplace else. The rainy day fund is obviously the place that he will likely go. But if that's tapped out, he's going to have to find ways to cut elsewhere. Whether or not that is the state university system, K through 12, shut more prisons down, whatever the case may be, he's going to have to find the money somewhere if Donald Trump won't give it to him, and I don't think that he will. Gavin Newsom is not going to have a lot of fun these next 2 years because everything that we just talked about with Medi-Cal applies to the MTA and BART. It applies to the bullet train. It applies to everything else that's going belly up. The FAIR plan, the insurance plan of last resort. There are not a lot of bright spots for him to point to. He's going to have nothing but crisis after crisis, and he's going to bounce from one to the next. And each one involves a bunch of answers where none of them are good. But he's the one who made his bed, so it's time to sleep in it.
And that's a up system.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you missed yesterday's show and you want to find out what you missed out on, including sound from Pamela Price's brand new podcast, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify. It's on all of those services. And if that's not easy enough, go to KABC.com or coming soon, KSFO.com, and you can hear all the latest. Why listen to Pamela Price's podcast when you can listen to us making fun of Pamela Price's podcast?
She called me a crime boss.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes Kids Bop Live, the certified bop tour at the Honda Center on September 20th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222 gets a 4-pack of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
And Randy, starting on April the 1st, we're going live in the Bay Area.
Starting Tuesday, April 1st, the John Phillips Show is going to be live noon to 3 every single day in Los Angeles on KABC and live noon to 3 every single day on KSFO in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we'll be covering everything that we cover in Los Angeles, Orange County, San Bernardino, and Riverside, as well as San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, and the rest of the Bay Area, as we regularly do. Now we're doing it live, which means we can take phone calls from the Bay Area, which should be very exciting. So the John Phillips Show moving to 2 markets starting on Tuesday, April 1st.
Gavin Newsom has a new scheme. We'll have all those details coming up in moments. But now, Randy, this may be before your time at KABC. But back when we had the contract with the Dodgers and all of the English Dodger games were broadcast on AM 790 KABC, we had a deal with the team where for one of the promotional days, it would be KABC that would get to do the giveaway. And sometimes it's a ball giveaway, sometimes it's a hat giveaway, sometimes it's a coffee mug, whatever the case may be. For the KABC giveaway, we decided that we would give away tiny little Dodger transistor radios that were only on KABC, so you could only listen to our airwaves, which included, at that time, the Dodger games. Only we did it from a company in China that got the frequency wrong. And we gave away 50,000 radios that led you to static.
It's the most KABC story ever.
When I read this story out of Sacramento, I immediately thought of our giveaway. Because Gavin Newsom is trying something somewhat similar to it.
Apparently, Gavin Newsom has been giving out burner phones to the top 100 CEOs that have businesses based in California for a direct line. And apparently he's been calling them bat phones because, he likes Marshawn to call him Batman.
Well, back when he was sleeping with his campaign manager's wife, he liked to spend a lot of time in the Bat Cave.
For more on Gavin's burner phones, which is makes me think of the third season of The Wire, let's go to KCRA.
People here at the state capitol have different ways of characterizing what the governor sent to these business leaders. His office confirmed since November, Governor Gavin Newsom has been sending out these phones on a rolling basis to the CEOs of the top 100 biggest businesses that are California-based.
Okay, so let's say one of those businesses is probably Chevron. What do you think the CEO of Chevron's been texting Gavin the last couple of years?
If I were the CEO of Chevron, I'd give it to one of my teenage kids.
What emojis would be sent over to Gavin Newsom's burner phone?
Or how about this? Just drop it off in a homeless encampment.
Now, multiple sources told us that several tech executives received them. Some didn't even think it was real.
Wouldn't you start taking whatever that phone number is for Gavin Newsom's burner phone and posting it all over Craigslist on M4M ads?
Why couldn't he have just given them his phone number? Why did it have to involve burner phones and all of this drama that's totally unnecessary?
Well, if the conversations get awkward, he doesn't want them to have his actual phone number.
But if you want someone to be able to get a hold of you, you don't go up to them and say, hey, in case you need me, here's a burner phone that I want you to have in your possession.
Let me just say, whether you're in a committed relationship or you're the governor of the state of California, nothing good ever comes from having two cell phones.
I want you to have this phone so you can communicate with me, but I don't like you enough to give you the actual number.
Now, multiple sources told us that several tech executives received them. Some didn't even think it was real.
Did Elon get one of those phones?
Well, he's a big businessman in California.
Newsom spokesman Izzy Gardon said in a statement that this was the governor's idea to connect more directly with business leaders in the state. One source told me this was meant for CEOs to have a direct line to the governor about any issues with the state's government. We caught up with the governor today about a variety of issues. I tried to ask him about what conversations have been like, but apparently he ran out of time. Your conversations with business groups that you sent to share about those conversations.
I literally can't hear it either.
I can't hear a word you're saying, Ashley. Sorry.
Well, maybe he can't hear what the executives are saying on the burner phones.
No, the conversations you've had.
I haven't seen any bills.
Thank you so much. So we checked in with adjunct McGeorge School of Law professor and longtime California lobbyist Chris McCaley, and we asked, is there any precedent to this? Has any other California leader done this before?
I don't think there's a precedent for sending individual burner phones, but certainly governors in the past have always shared their personal contact information with executives from around the state to have that direct line of communication.
Now, is it possible that a reason that you want to use a burner phone is that's not subject to the same public records requests as, I don't know, his actual phone?
Who knows? With the changing technology, it's hard to keep up with it. For example, when the mayor of Los Angeles said that she deleted any number of text messages that were related to the fires and that she wasn't required by law to produce them because text messages aren't emails and the law doesn't apply to text messages for some reason.
It's because the law was written in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if there's something that protects you from having a conversation subject to, I don't know, the courts, if it's on a burner phone. I think it's just a gimmick. I don't think he's trying to avoid having any of the conversations subpoenaed. I think he just thinks that the gimmick is cool.
Do you think any of the CEOs actually called him?
No, I think they hate him.
Executives from around the state to have that direct line of communication.
Are there any legal concerns with this from where you stand?
I don't think there are any legal concerns. Some people might question whether or not they could find out if somebody did use the phone and communicate directly to the governor, but those types of conversations are not subject to public disclosure.
Can you imagine Gavin after a long night of watching Fox News and drinking a bottle and a half of red wine, starts drunk texting the CEOs on his burner phone? You up?
Well, if I was one of the CEOs and I started getting drunk texts from Gavin Newsom, let me tell you, I would have a real good time with that.
Hey, HP, you want to talk?
What'd you think of Jesse Waters tonight? I agree with his mom.
So basically, the public would not be able to know what these conversations entail between the governor and these business leaders?
Only if the governor chose to publicize that or disclose who called and what was said in such a phone call. Otherwise, no, those are exempt from public disclosure.
To be clear, California taxpayers are not paying for these phones. The Protocol Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization, is footing the bill for this.
What?
Yeah, that's another thing they like to do. They have all of these nonprofits that do things like this, so he can say, no tax dollars were used for these purposes. And what these organizations are typically, and I'm not familiar with this one, but many of them are private organizations where if you want to donate to the governor and he's not running for re-election, he could say, well, donate $25,000 to this group. And it essentially acts as a slush fund for him. And it's not, quote unquote, political money to be used for political ads, but it's money that he has at his disposal for projects like this.
I can't think of a bigger racket than a state-funded nonprofit that buys cell phones so Gavin can talk to CEOs.
Yeah, no kidding.
The Protocol Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization, is footing the bill for this.
We need to examine every contract with every nonprofit in the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, and the state of California.
Well, many of them get government money. They're not government entities, but many of them get government grants, and those grants pay for their operational expenses.
That nonprofit has paid for the governor's inauguration and swearing-in ceremonies, plus his official travel. Reporting at the state capitol.
Yeah, that's not a real nonprofit.
No.
Reporting at the state capitol, Ashley Zavala, KCRA 3 News.
There you go, Gavin and his secret cell phones.
I'll tell you, this guy is trying every stunt in the book to generate more attention for himself.
Is any of it positive?
No. But what's the difference between this and John Cox traveling around the state with a bear? It's all gimmicks. That's what it is. It's like Katie Porter with the whiteboard.
You know that's going up and down the state. And the minivan.
Everyone's turning into Carrot Top. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Penny writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com on Gavin Newsom's burner phones. This proves once again that they only care about the elites. Where's my burner phone? I have some issues to discuss with the governor.
Didn't Obama give out those phones at one point?
Oh, yeah?
Obama phones, they called them. I always saw people talking about Obama phones on TV, and they talked about them in the context of them working, and I thought, maybe I need to switch to Obama phone from T-Mobile.
Didn't we? This is probably 10 years ago here at KABC in Los Angeles. We had a station phone. It was a cell phone where people could text the station, and every text message was very explicit.
Yes. It was pictures of all of our listeners' genitalia. And what was funny was they wanted us to really promote the hell out of it. because we'd be talking about some hot subject and we'd be taking calls, and they said, incorporate the burner phone too. Make sure you read those text messages. We want the audience to know that the show is fully interactive. You're going to the phones, you're going to the email, you're going to the text messages. We're talking about some hot button issue. I go to the phones, I go to the email. We're going 100 miles an hour. I look to the phone, and what do I see? Penis, 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 penis. And I thought, okay, we're done with that. And then I got called in and said, how come you're not going to the phone more often? And I said, okay, let's have a little meeting about this because I need help. How do I incorporate this into the show? Have any ideas? I know you can turn anything into show content. Explain this one to me. And that's when they got rid of it. But I think it lasted less than a week.
Didn't go very well.
No, everything was explicit. Everything. And then occasionally it would be spam asking for money for Katie Porter or whoever.
See, this is why the email works. Only half of the emails are explicit.
Well, but it's not explicit in terms of people showing us pictures of themselves. It's explicit in terms of what they say about Barbara Ferrer.
No, thank you.